The number 666 is one of the most misunderstood symbols in the entire Bible. For some people, it's become a source of fear, and for others, kind of a fascination. But for many Christians, it's something they've heard about for years without ever really knowing what to do with it, other than assuming it points to something kind of dark, distant, and probably dangerous. But when Revelation introduces this number, it doesn't do so to stir panic or invite speculation. John, the author of Revelation, is writing to real churches, living under real pressure, trying to remain faithful to Jesus in a world that demanded their loyalty in subtle and not so subtle ways. In that setting, 666 isn't presented as a puzzle to solve or a villain to identify. It's given as a way of seeing clearly, a way of recognizing the kind of power that looks ultimate, that demands allegiance and quietly competes with our trust in God. And if we read that way, the way that Revelation intends for us to, it stops being sensational, it starts being clarifying. Not something to obsess over, but something that sharpens our discernment. And once you see 666, what it's actually exposing, the entire passage begins to make a lot more sense. And I want to start this video by looking at what the book of Revelation is really about. Because many people, they look at this book and they treat it like a puzzle book. They assume that it exists to help us to map out the end of the world, to decode symbols, to identify future villains. And when the book is read that way, it quickly becomes confusing and sometimes even frightening. But that isn't why the book of Revelation was written. Revelation is both pastoral and prophetic. It's a retelling of the gospel for communities living under pressure. It announces again who Jesus is, what he has done, and what his death and resurrection mean in a world that is still shaped by competing powers. From the opening lines, Revelation centers everything on Jesus. He is the faithful witness, the firstborn from the dead, the ruler of the king and the king of the earth. He is the lamb that was slain, whose blood purchased the people for God. Victory in Revelation does not come through domination or force, but through faithful witness and endurance. The cross becomes the standard by which all power is judged. And that matters. Because the church receiving this book, they weren't like these abstract readers. They were real communities trying to follow Jesus with an empire that claimed ultimate authority. Rome shaped their political lives, their economic lives, their religious and their social belonging. Loyalty to the empire was assumed and refusal was disruptive. Sometimes that pressure turned violent. Christians were often imprisoned, some were killed. Faithfulness could cost you everything, and Revelation doesn't soften that reality. But the danger is not just in physical persecution. The empire rarely sustains itself through violence alone. It also forms people through habits, through rewards, through participation, and many believers were not asked to renounce Jesus outright. Rather, they were asked to live a life as if he was not Lord in the spaces that mattered the most, to give just enough loyalty to keep life functioning. And this is where Revelation sharpens its vision. Again and again, John pulls back the curtain to show what is happening beneath the surface. Political power is never neutral. Economic systems are never merely practical. Cultural pressure is never just social. All of this is bound up with worship and allegiance. And the book of Revelation does not simply tell the church that Jesus has won. It shows them how his victory redefines every competing claim to authority. If the Lamb truly reigns, then power that demands worship while promising security is exposed as counterfeit. And that's the kind of world Revelation speaks into. And it is in that soil which the number 666 appears. Not as a riddle for the curious, but as a discernment tool for people learning how to remain faithful to the Lamb in a world that constantly invites their allegiance elsewhere. And now as we look at the number 666, we first need to understand how numbers are functioning in the book of Revelation. And that requires slowing down a little bit, because John is not using numbers the way we usually do. In modern day, we look at numbers primarily as mathematical. They measure quantity. They answer how much or how many. But in the world Revelation was written into, especially in apocalyptic literature of the day, numbers carried symbolic weight. They communicated meaning before they communicated measurement. You didn't just count them, you weighed them, you interpreted them. John assumes his readers understands this. He never stops to explain the numerical system because it was already familiar within the biblical story. And Revelation is not inventing a new symbolic language, rather it's drawing from patterns that run all throughout Scripture. Certain numbers had accumulated meaning over time. 7, for example, consistently represents completeness or fullness or even perfection, and it's tied to God's creative work in Genesis. And it becomes a way of describing what is whole, what is finished, what is ordered by God, and even sometimes God himself. And Revelation leads heavily into the symbolism. The book is structured around sevens. 7 churches, 7 seals, 7 trumpets, 7 bowls. These are not random groupings. They're signals that God's purposes are comprehensive and complete, even when history might look chaotic. And then by contrast, the number 6 falls short of 7. It falls short of the completeness and the fullness of 7. In Revelation, it's marked by what is human, what is finite, what is limited. And the limitation itself is not evil. What becomes dangerous and evil is when human power views these things still as ultimate, demanding allegiance that should only belong to God. And repetition in Revelation also intensifies meaning. When something appears again and again, John is not just emphasizing it, he's deepening it. This is why God is declared holy, holy, holy. That repetition is not accidental, it's theological. So when the number 6 is represented 3 times, John isn't playing a numerical game, he's naming a reality. In Revelation, repetition exposes imitation. The beast doesn't just oppose God, it mimics God. It's demanding worship and building a system pressured around participation. 666 marks the imitation for what it is, the human power presenting itself as ultimate power. It looks complete, it claims authority, but it falls short. Revelation is not asking us to decode hidden math or solve puzzles meant for the future. It's training us to see patterns, to recognize what kind of power is at work all around us, and to discern whether that power comes from God or something else. Numbers in Revelation aren't meant to confuse the church. They're meant to help God's people see clearly. So with that in mind, let's turn to what John says about the number 666. This number first appears at the end of Revelation 13. It's a passage that's focused almost entirely on worship, on power, and participation. And John describes a beast that exercises authority, that demands allegiance, that produces an image, that enforces loyalty through social and economic pressure. And this isn't abstract symbolism. It's a vision of how power actually works when it's presented itself as something ultimate. And John says that the number of the beast is 666, and he calls for wisdom. And he does not call for fear or speculation. He doesn't frame it as some secret knowledge for the clever. Wisdom in Scripture is the ability to see reality truthfully and to live faithfully within it. And the number is meant to help the church to recognize what kind of power we're dealing with. And John also says that this number is the number of a man. And that phrase sets a boundary. Whatever the beast represents is not divine. It is human power elevated beyond its limits. Authority that wants to be treated as ultimate. A system that demands the kind of loyalty that only belongs to God. And this is where 666 does its work. It exposes a claim. The beast looks complete. It looks powerful. It presents itself as the only viable way to live, to trade, to belong, to survive. But the number marks it as something less than what it claims to be. It is not God. It falls short of what he is and what he is offering. Revelation consistently contrasts the way God rules with the way that the empire rules. God reigns through a lamb who was slain, through self-giving love, through faithfulness, even in death. But the beast reigns by coercion, by creating spectacles, by forced participation. It mimics divine authority, but it can't carry divine weight. And this is why 666 is not about identifying a specific individual. It names a pattern. Human-powered, organized into systems that promise security, that demand worship, that punish refusal. Power that insists it is necessary, permanent, and worthy of allegiance. Revelation marks it as power that is fundamentally incomplete. And the number doesn't tell the church who to fear. It teaches them what to recognize. When authority asks for worship, when participation becomes compulsory, when faithfulness becomes costly, 666 names the reality beneath those pressures. It reminds God's people of what claims to be ultimate only actually belongs to God. And that's what the number means. It's not a prediction, it's a discernment tool, a way of seeing through the false fullness and remembering that only the Lamb is worthy of worship. So, what does all this mean for us today? Revelation never just gives us information without helping us shape our lives. It doesn't just tell the church what is true. It forms people who can live faithfully even when that truth might be costly. You see, the point of 666 is not to help Christians identify evil somewhere far away. It's meant to sharpen our discernment close to home, to train us to notice where our allegiance sometimes slips, not always through dramatic rejections of faith, but through sometimes the more subtle ways. And Revelation is honest about how this usually happens. The greatest danger is not always open hostility towards God. Sometimes it's imitation. It's the power around us that borrows this religious language, these systems that we buy into that promise safety and stability and success, while quietly taking loyalty that belongs to God alone. And this is why Revelation places the mark of the beast alongside another mark. God's people are also marked, but not in order to control them. Rather, God seals us in his name. Our identity is now built in him and not on fear or survival, but on belonging, not on compliance, but on faithfulness. And this contrast is intentional. The beast marks his people in order to manage them, in order to force loyalty, but God seals his people in order to claim them and to shape their life into what he created us to be, full of joy and peace. So the question Revelation presses is not whether the beast will appear someday. It's whether our lives are being shaped right now by the beast or by the Lamb. Whether our habits, our fears, our hopes, are they being shaped by God or by something else? You see, Revelation does not leave us with a false power. It actually ends with the Lamb. When evil is exposed and undone, when faithful witnesses are vindicated, with a renewed world where God dwells with his people, and the evil power no longer needs to be resisted because what has been damaged has been healed. And that is why 666 is not a number to obsess over. It's a reminder to stay awake, to remain faithful, to remember what claims ultimate authority. If it's not God, it will always fall short. In a world full of loud powers and these quiet pressures, Revelation offers the church this assurance. The Lamb still reigns, and allegiance to him is never misplaced. So 666 isn't a number to decode or fear. It's a symbol meant to train discernment, to remind us that power demands worship, but if the power is not connected to God, it cannot give life and will always fall short. Revelation doesn't leave us staring at the beast, but it points us to the Lamb. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it encouraged you to keep your eyes focused on the Lamb and to step into the life he has for you. If you want to go deeper in your faith, I write a free weekly email through my Substack that you can find in the link down below. I think it'll help you continue to grow in your life and your faith. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.